Welcome everyone to the latest episode of eCommerce Australia. Joined today by CEO of Disco Labs and Submarine, Gavin Ballard. So Gavin has an extensive background in tech and development, now in the role of CEO, working with brands such as JB Hi-Fi. By the way, mate, I see some very, very kind words from the GM of JB Hi-Fi, so congrats on that. Hello Foods and La Visa, so looking forward to hearing more about his journey and how Submarine is helping the subscription economy of enterprise-level businesses on Shopify Plus. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's lovely to be here.
Good to hear, mate. So yeah, you've obviously worked with some pretty notable enterprise-type retailers. So looking forward to getting your insights on that. But I left out the fact you're a lawyer too. I just learned that. So you've got a very interesting background, mate. So how did Disco Labs and Submarine sort of come about over the last sort of 8 or 9 years?
I try to keep the lawyer part quiet because, so my background is software engineering and law, but sort of dabbled with corporate law for a bit and decided, no, software engineering was the way I wanted to go. So worked at a couple of startups here in Melbourne and then got to a point where I was freelancing and sort of just fell into the Shopify ecosystem. And this was quite OG in the Shopify world, so maybe 12 years ago or so. Just really loved the platform, found it really interesting to work on and hack on. And the ecosystem was really, really interesting, very collaborative, and people, really just starting to push the boundaries of what you could do online. So just went from there. Because of my software engineering background, I like to focus on back-end side of things, so building custom apps and integrations, and that sort of naturally meant that I worked with larger merchants on the platform because they tend to be the ones that have the budget for sort of custom software builds, and that led to more work than I could handle. So the classic thing that you do when you're a freelancer, you're like, oh well, more people will solve this problem, and started an agency. So the agency Disco Labs was what I've run for the last 6 or 7 years, focused on that, building custom software for merchants type of vibe. And then through that, really started to find we were doing similar thing time and time again for larger merchants, which was all around payment related things. So subscriptions being a big part of that, but also pre-sales and crowdfunding. So sort of any sort of workflow or customer experience where it's more than just like a one-time purchase. And that we just got that time and time again. So we built our own internal toolkit to deliver those types of projects, and that was Submarine. But then the last 12 to 18 months has been a story of the business really doubling down on that as a standalone product. And today I would say we're more of a product company than we are an agency. So it's been a big shift, but an exciting one.
Yeah, brilliant. I maybe can kind of see where the name Submarine come from. Am I in the right sort of area of sort of working underneath and in the background, I guess, and having a level of sight, but not too much. I don't know.
Oh, I like that. There's a little bit of an element of we do think of it as a platform, right? So it is something that people use to build exactly what they need and exactly what they want on top of it. So I think there's definitely something about the sort of the being under the surface piece, and then there's also kind of like the subscriptions element to it as well. But yeah, it not thought through any more than that. So I like finding the hidden meanings. It does mean we get a lot of we have a lot of nautical puns on our internal tooling and systems.
Brilliant, and I love a good pun. No, it's a name. I guess it's easy for recall as well. So I guess getting into Submarine as a software as a service. As a platform, why do e-commerce businesses use Submarine? Why do they sort of kick off initial meetings with you? What's the sort of need that you're that solves?
Yeah, so I think the experiences that we enable, and again, like the primary ones are subscriptions, pre-sales, and crowdfunding. We also do some other stuff around try before you buy or upsells, but sort of those three are the headline ones. They're all experiences that are becoming more and more important for merchants, I think, because they give them flexibility, they give the customers a better experience, And in general, merchants are looking for ways to improve loyalty, improve conversion, improve average order value. And these different business models are always doing that, whether it's like building up hype for a pre-sale campaign, or whether it's like collecting money in advance through a crowdfund before you actually have to invest in supply chain and producing inventory, or with subscription. If you've got a product that is amenable to subscription, the reliability of recurring revenue is huge for e-com merchants, just as it is for the software businesses. So, they're all business models that are quite important for merchants. And sometimes merchants are coming to us because they just know this is a crucial part of our business. We know we need to build this, and what we've looked around, the stuff that's off the shelf isn't meeting our needs, or it's really important to us that it integrates with our back-end system in this way, or we really want to make sure customers have the option to pick and choose their bundles with their subscriptions, like all of these different requirements. They can't find something off the shelf, so they're talking to us. But equally, we're also finding, as we are becoming more prevalent in the market, or the agencies that we're working with are getting more familiar with what Submarine is and what it does, they're also seeing the opportunity to say, hey, Merchant X, have you actually tried running a pre-sale campaign? Because you've got the customer base there. This could be a really good opportunity for you. So yeah, there's kind of like a dual track there. There's some people who come to us knowing it's what they want and what they need, and there are others where maybe there's an opportunity there that they hadn't thought about before to get some extra revenue or improve their conversions on out of stock items or things like that.
Yeah, brilliant. Actually, just about to send a podcast, episode 31 podcast live today, which had the Scratch founder, Mike Halligan. And one of the things that just timely in the way things work sometimes, but he mentioned that Shopify wasn't great with subscription-based businesses. So I guess it's a perfect segue into to giving you an introduction into Mike, or you probably know him anyway. But I guess that's always been the one kind of hurdle or criticism, is that perhaps some of those apps that you use for subscription aren't quite user-friendly. So is that sort of what kind of, I guess, forced your hand in a way to build something custom?
Yeah, in a way. So the very first version of Submarine was actually built for UFoods, so Brisbane-based Australian success story. They grew to 9 figures in revenue before selling to HelloFresh a couple of years ago. But they were on Shopify. We started working with them, and we built out some delivery logic fulfillment pieces of software for them. But they didn't have subscription, which for a meal delivery company seems pretty crazy. But it was because there really wasn't much you could do on Shopify. The solutions that were there were all external checkout, so you'd sort of put your order together on Shopify, but then have to go off somewhere else to actually complete the subscription checkout. And that was basically a deal breaker for UFoods, because they had a bunch of custom stuff that already built in their checkout. So what they were actually doing, rather than having a subscription system, was they were SMSing all their customers every week and being like, hey, do you want that order again? Which is obviously a pretty terrible customer experience and just doesn't convert very well. So we actually built something completely custom for them that was built into the native Shopify checkout, which was actually quite novel at the time. And it was well before Shopify had any sort of native subscription offering in their APIs. So as soon as we built that, we had more and more people saying, hey, how did you do that? We really want to do that, which is what made us think, maybe there's a bit of a product here. So that was kind of like the origin story of Submarine. And there's like Shopify's story around subscriptions has improved a lot since then. They've added support for native subscription APIs. They've definitely pushed merchants to use those APIs and the apps that integrate with those APIs, which is great, and definitely for a lot of merchants, what you can get out of the box with an app and Shopify subscription APIs is there. But where we see it falling short and where we see ourselves coming in is where there's more complexity or more flexibility required. And so even like in the meal delivery space, there's still a big gap between how almost every subscription app thinks about a subscription, which is, I have the same SKU, I want it every 2 weeks, I'm just going to recur and pay for it. And I think that type of subscription is actually becoming less and less appealing for customers and merchants, especially as it gets easier and easier to buy something one time. So if you look at something like Shop Pay, which makes it super easy to do a checkout, the easier that becomes, the less appealing having a subscription becomes. If it is just, hey, I need this one thing, send it to me every 2 weeks. I think there's like a service or a curation layer that needs to sit on top of those subscriptions to make it really valuable for customers. So whether it's a wine club where the merchant is actually like putting together the different things based on your taste and preferences, or if it's a nappy subscription and they're like over time they are evolving the product that you're getting based on the age of your child, like there needs to be something more for a subscription to be a really valuable proposition for customers. And I think we do that well, but I don't think a lot of other apps do.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's really interesting. And again, I guess I'll go back to Mike's episode. He literally said something very similar around subscriptions being, more than just taking payment, product relationship. It needs to be much. So yeah, really interesting. I guess the last 2 episodes I've had that sort of same theme, and probably leads me to the next question then, just around the landscape of subscriptions. Are you seeing more and more companies, businesses coming to you wanting to do subscriptions, or like where do you see that sort of growth? Is it only going to get bigger and bigger over the next 12, 24 months? Do you suggest?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think lots of people are certainly looking at subscription and saying, oh, well, recurring revenue seems like a no-brainer. We've got to do this. But at the same time, I think on the customer side of things, there's a bit of fatigue. I mean, and this applies to software as well as physical products. If you're in e-com world where, everything is a subscription these days, and so it does become quite overwhelming, or it can become out of control pretty quickly. So I think there's definitely that element of, again, as a customer, if I'm just getting the same thing every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks, where is the extra value in the subscription? Maybe I'm getting a 10% discount, maybe I'm getting a 15% discount, maybe that's enough to make it worth my while. But I actually think where the bigger growth is brands that work out a way to provide an offering that's in line with their brand, that adds something more to the customer. To pick an example, someone like a Good Pair Days, who a wine subscription, they're not on Shopify, they're completely custom platform, but they've done an amazing job of adding so much value, like really understanding who you are and what your preferences are as a wine consumer, and making sure that the product they deliver week in and week out. And that's like one of our no-brainer subscriptions that we have all the time, because everything they do is perfectly aligned. Whereas, if it's just to take the flip side, you're a Dan Murphy's or something, and your subscription is, I just want the same 6-pack of beer every 2 or 3 weeks, like, but the value add there just really isn't as much.
Yeah. So are you saying that Dan Murphy, and this is just probably an example, Dan Murphy's, with their subscriptions, they just one product, they just sort of, that's their, I guess their what am I trying to say? That's just how their sort of subscription works. Whereas I just missed that name of the company. Sorry, mate. That you said.
Good Pair Days is the wine subscription that highly rated. No affiliate. Well, I probably do have an affiliate code somewhere. I should find it down and put it in the show notes. But yes, it's. And one of the reasons that for Dan Murphy's, I think it'd be hard, is that their delivery is actually so good. Like, they do 2-hour delivery to most metro, and very rapid delivery elsewhere. So if you're a customer of theirs and you know that you can get something within 2 hours, then where's the value in having the subscription? Because you're going in, you're picking what you're ordering, and they're not adding that curation layer on top. So, and in lots of verticals and industries, there are a lot of products where it is just, I need it as I need it, rather than this is something that's useful for me to get every 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, some small smarts around that is always useful. And to go back and answer your actual question at the very start, which is like, where do I see the trend of subscription going? I think it's becoming more and more appealing to merchants, but I think the ones that are going to be successful doing it are the ones that are thinking about what's the actual value add beyond just you giving me more money, because it does have to be a two-way exchange of value. And I think the one thing that we will see more of actually are things like paid membership programs, which is effectively a form of subscription, a way to, and it's far less locking in the actual value of dollar value of that membership subscription, whether it's a monthly or a quarterly or an annual one. It's a lot more about getting a customer that's so invested in your brand, they're willing to pay to get access to it and being able to drive lots and lots of incremental revenue from that one really high value customer, especially with the cost of acquiring new customers going up and up every day.
Yeah, brilliant. I was going to actually sort of mention, it does feel, the subscription almost feels like a bit of a membership by way of adding more and more value and actually being, having a two-way relationship as opposed to just recurring revenue from a subscription. If you think of like a gym, for example, they don't really give you too much above and beyond. They just give you access, and that's a sort of a membership. But subscription and a retail membership seems to be, perhaps an area that's going to be growing in the next 12 to 24 months, where retailers have to start to give more value and earn that membership.
Yeah, definitely. I think that'll definitely be part of the trend we see.
Really interesting. Yeah. And so not only do you guys, the Submarine, do subscriptions, but your platform also allows for crowdfunding and pre-sales, you mentioned. I'd love to touch on those two areas. Maybe let's start with pre-sales, because you mentioned that before in terms of sort of piping up a new product launch or anything like that. How does your program, or your platform, help with pre-sales and retailers, and have you got an example of that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's kind of two business models around pre-sales, which are interesting. The first one is definitely like the launch, the hype campaign type of thing. And so one of our cornerstone merchants for a very long time has been Hasbro, the D2C toy, or their D2C site, which they sell toys and collectibles. So when the new range of Star Wars figurines launches, they're launched on pre-sales via Submarine. And they're really where you've got like an event or a conference or something like that, having that hype around, hey, this is now on pre-sale, be one of the first people to go in and lock it in. There are only 1,000 units. It might, and then, their products often will take 3 or 4 months before they actually ship out to customers, but the customer being able to jump in, be part of the hype and lock it in, like so many of their products will sell out within the first couple of hours of them launching on pre-sale. So from our platform perspective, we're behind the scenes orchestrating all of that. So whether it's defining when the campaign's going to launch, how many units are available, enforcing that restriction, and then orchestrating the payment piece, so tokenizing the customer's card, so we're not actually charging them at the time they're placing their order. We're going to charge them when it ships. So yeah, there's kind of that hype element to it. And then the other use case that we see a lot is merchants using it as a way to improve the out-of-stock experience for customers. So I'm sure many of your audience would be very familiar with like landing on a web page, wanting to buy a product, and it's out of stock, but there's an email inbox which is, hey, email me when this is back in stock. So what we're seeing merchants doing at the moment, and testing this out with a few brands in different verticals, is rather than a notify me when back in stock email list, it's actually just take the order, let the customer add it to cart, check out, obviously inform them, hey, this is in stock. You can place your order now. We won't take any money. We'll only take it when it's ready to ship. And so if that comes back in stock in 2 months' time, you send them an email 3 days or a week or something, some period of time before, saying, hey, this is coming back into stock. If you don't do anything, we'll charge you and ship it out to you as soon as we can. And so there's a huge difference in the conversion lift from those two scenarios. So we have merchants who use the waitlist method. They'll collect customers' emails, but then when they email them out when it's back in stock, it converts at roughly 8% seems to be an average figure that we're hearing. Whereas if you actually capture the order, the customer isn't actually paying anything on the day, but you're getting their order at the time that they have the highest intent to purchase. If that order gets placed, then that converts at about 80%. So you obviously get slightly fewer people actually placing the order, but overall it works out to be a pretty massive lift in actual conversion and dollars in the bank and finalized orders. So two really interesting use cases, and both of them doing really good things in different contexts.
That's super fast. That's just that's the really good insights there. That's a huge turnaround. Obviously, as you said, you're acquiring less, but I can think of a few different brands I've been on recently. G-Star for one. They do the we're out of stock here, and we'll let you know once it's back. Perhaps they will call.
Yeah, and I mean, you collect a lot more information about the customer, right? Because they've placed an order with you, so you've built a much stronger relationship than just being on a wait list. You also have the opportunity to upsell them and get them to buy stuff that's in stock as well, because they're actually placing an order with you. So you don't really get that opportunity if you're just shoving someone onto a wait list.
Yeah, brilliant. And what about sort of that crowdfunding component? I'll admit I haven't had too much experience with that sort of strategy, but how does Submarine kind of help in that crowdfunding space?
Yeah. So again, from a platform perspective, we're kind of orchestrating it. So letting people define what products they want to crowdfund, when they want it to start, when they want it to finish, what goals they want to reach, what's going to happen in different milestones, all of that kind of thing. I think crowdfunding is definitely it's a business model that is useful for merchants who have a pretty established customer base already. Like you want a community that you can go out to and say, hey, we've got this product or we've got this idea. We want you to help us build it. But if you've got an engaged audience like that, then it can be a really powerful tool. And from your perspective, you've got a very good way of gauging demand for the product and getting the funds up front to actually go out and build it. There's lots of rules around, depending on what jurisdiction you're in terms of what you can and can't do and what you can say and what you can't. But for the merchants that are using it as a tool to do that, Hasbro is probably our best example of successful crowdfunding campaigns as well. But they have campaigns that $500, $600 items that have raised $50-60 million in advance of actually having to go out and do the work to produce the product. So it can be really, really effective if you get it to work. And there are lots of merchants that we work with who would be using existing crowdfunding platforms. So they might be using a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or something like that. And those platforms are really great. They do take a very big slice of your margin on your crowdfunding campaign, and we're a lot, it might be 15% in some cases, whereas we're way more down on the kind of 1% range. But there's also a really huge advantage to being able to run that campaign on your own site with your own branding. Like you are in that customer relationship then. Same as with pre-sales, you have the opportunity to get them to buy something right now in the same cart as when they're contributing to your crowdfunding campaign. And at the end of the day, you are in the branding and the experience, which if you're a merchant who's already got an established customer base, then they're going to come to your website and contribute to your crowdfunding campaign. You're not really getting that much out of the network that someone like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo has. And like it's definitely situational. Like there are definitely merchants who are better off running it on an external platform if they want the exposure that platform will give them. Like with any of the merchants that we talk to, we always sort of work out, okay, well, are we the best fit for you? Are there other options that would work out? But it's interesting. Another merchant that is really interesting in the crowdfunding space, and they're not one of ours, but I do have hopes that one day they will be. But Taylor Stitch, who's a US clothing brand, and they get in these shipments of really rare or unique one-off denim, and they'll run crowdfunding campaigns to be like, hey, let's work out what we actually want to make with this. Do we want to make a jacket? Do we want to make jeans? Do we want to make headbands? I don't know if they've ever made a denim headband. That would be weird. But they use the crowdfunding campaigns. It's not only a way to get in funds, but also to help direct their product development, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So with that crowdfunding model too, with those couple of examples that you mentioned, does that help also with iteration of the product as well? So that you might raise some capital, but also start to develop a product or start to kind of get a bit of a feel as to what people are after and some different ideas as to how they could tweak it?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the legalities come into it a little bit in terms of what you're allowed to raise money from the public for, and what you're not. And that, it's we very much the merchants we work with have done their diligence and they've either been running that crowdfunding campaign on a different platform. They're moving over to Shopify. They use us to do that. But definitely basically, the bottom line is in most places, you've got to have a very clear idea of what you're producing and be able to bring it to market rather than it be completely experimental R&D. So there are lines you have to walk on that front. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the example for Taylor Stitch just gave, they very much use it as a way to direct their product direction. And they've produced jeans, they've produced jackets, they know how to do that. So it's not like they're inviting a risky investment on something. They're selling a process that they're going to apply to an existing product. So yeah, it's a bit of a trickier one, but for the merchants it works really well.
Yeah, awesome. And so you're obviously dealing with a lot of enterprise level clients. What are your predictions? I guess it's a hard one. I'll definitely hold you to it over the next 12 to 24 months. But what are you sort of seeing out there in e-com land? Where do you think? Obviously, we're all well aware during COVID it spiked. Then it's come off a little bit. Probably just a natural correction. It's, as you said at the top, it's an interesting space at the minute. Where do you see things sort of evolving in the next 12 to 24 months? What do you think is going to be sort of a popular move? And I guess some predictions.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, in terms of like the general macroeconomic environment, it does make it kind of a bit hard because it's kind of a weird time, and everyone keeps saying we're heading for a recession, and then people keep buying Star Wars toys. So I think probably we haven't hit the brunt of that yet. So I think there'll be, and especially with interest rate rises here in Australia, it seems like things will slow down for the rest of the year. And it'll be interesting to see what the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas period looks like for 2023. But overall, I think things are pretty resilient, and there'll be probably a lot of brands that, I mean, we're lucky in that the brands we work with, the larger enterprise ones, like they're able to weather, 3 or 4 years of losses to get through the other side, and there'll be opportunity for them to make that up. So it's probably, smaller brands that don't have that resilience built in that'll need to be a bit more nimble and try out new things. So for them, perhaps there is an opportunity to say, okay, well, let's go all in on a subscription program or a paid membership program or something like that. But the other bit bigger trend, I think, and it's full of buzzwords, but the headless and composable commerce spaces, I have opinions about what those things actually mean that differ from what a lot of the marketing is, but definitely I think it's true to say that larger merchants, and not even when we say larger, even if typical, I guess, mid-market merchants, so 5 to 15 million a year in revenue, they're wanting more flexibility, and they're seeing the advantage in being able to pick out the best-in-class tools for their stack, and wanting some glue that's going to make it easy to stick in Klaviyo as an email marketing tool instead of their default platform mailer or what have you. I'm trying to not step on any sponsor toes or anything like that. So I think there's definitely just like a strong move to having that composability and flexibility. So I think for any new tech vendor in the space, it's important to be able to explain, okay, well, this is the boundary of our solution, and this is how we work with all these other different systems. It's certainly something that we're pretty conscious of from our tech stack and what we want to do, because no platform, and even Shopify as an example, which is kind of held up as this classic monolith e-com platform that does everything for you. I mean, I think for a long time they've gotten away from the idea that they are best in class in every single tool, right? They are themselves a really valuable piece of glue that you can bring in all these different components, and it's about how easy you make that. So I think we'll see both merchants and tech vendors pay more and more attention to that over the next couple of years.
Yeah, interesting. I think you're right too. Like, flexibility is obviously really important to navigate the challenges of the next 12 to 24 months. And to kind of tie that up nicely, I guess we all want the same as consumers as well, whether it's subscription models or memberships. Everyone wants the flexibility to be able to pick and choose what they want to do. And I guess that's sort of where you guys come in from a subscription and a flexibility point of view. Are you when someone comes to you, is it always a bespoke solution that you guys? Is it completely custom as to what they need, or do you have a sort of a product ready to go off the shelf, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when we were an agency building this, it was very much like bespoke. Everyone's a snowflake. Let's make this work for your specific business. Where we are now, it is far more off the shelf. So someone can install Submarine into their Shopify store and drag and drop a couple of widgets and have a working pre-sale experience like today. But to get the most out of the platform and to leverage that flexibility, then that's usually we're working with an agency that's doing like a front end redesign and rebuild, or the merchant has an in-house team that's doing a lot of that. So I'd say the vast majority of merchants we work with, it is a pretty high touch. Hey, we're walking you through and white gloving this, but there is something there that's pretty out of the box. And there's a very big difference between having to do a bit of implementation work to get something custom up and running in like a month versus some of the projects we worked on as an agency, 9 months, 10 months of work across a whole bunch of different stuff happening. So we definitely see ourselves as far more off the shelf than we were, but with the opportunity to build stuff on top of the platform that's the real wow stuff and the real value add.
Yeah, brilliant. And what size? Obviously, Shopify Plus, you're looking at that $1 million plus in revenue. But what is there? Do you work with sort of medium size merchants or smaller? Can they sort of get Submarine and start to sort of utilize some of that tech, or does it need to be a certain sort of revenue, annual revenue, where it's like, okay, now we've sort of matured to this point, we could look at Submarine?
Yeah, I mean, we used to be pretty upper end of the market in Shopify world might be 20 million a year and up, but I think now that we've productized it, we're a lot more accessible for a lot more merchants. So I think it's a lot less about revenue numbers and more about complexity or flexibility needs. So if you're a merchant and maybe you're doing $1 million, $2 million a year in revenue, you want to start a subscription program, or you've got an existing subscription program, and that's a really important part of your business, but you think, well, to actually take this to the next level, I need to plug it into my customer data platform that has all this information about like what my customers want on their profiles and things like that. That's either, I need to go and build a custom app to do it, which is super expensive and probably not worth it at that revenue number, or I could leverage Submarine, which yes, will require a bit of custom dev, and maybe I've got a freelancer that can do that. But my ROI on that custom dev is going to be, I'm going to be able to double my subscription program in 2 years. So there is definitely a little bit of a how long is a piece of string. Typically, I'd say the merchants that get the most value out of it are the ones that are doing 10 million a year and up in rev. And we have some merchants that are 9-figure stores that are using us. But we definitely don't. Again, because as a product, we're there and available to the people that are able to take advantage of it. We definitely don't want to disqualify anyone from at least trying it out and seeing if they can solve a problem that they have.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, awesome, mate. One question, couple of questions. Sorry, to just before we finish, pricing.
Yeah,
As you touched on pricing, when we were talking about sort of crowdfunding, or that you're a little bit you charge less than some of the other platforms, and the retailers keep more control. Where do you sit in terms of pricing? Is it a sort of price on application type thing, or is there a percentage of sales, or how does that how do you factor your pricing?
Yep. It's pretty simple. It's we try to charge based on value delivered, and the easiest way for us to do that is percentage of revenue generated. Basically 1% of the revenue that you generate through your subscription program, your pre-sale campaigns, your crowdfunding campaigns. That's our ongoing fee. We do have some minimum spends, but it depends on what your anticipated volume is on what that looks like. That's kind of like the most you'd be paying is that 1%. And then if you're a large merchant with significant volume, then that's flexible. But that's kind of where we start. And we think that aligns pretty well with obviously from a merchant perspective. If it's not working and you're not actually getting anything out of it, then you're not paying as much as you would be otherwise. But also for us, it incentivizes us to work with our merchants on a long-term basis. And we've got merchants who started out using us for one product, and over time they've grown into using multiple products on the platform because they've seen value in the other ones, and that's obviously great for us. It means more revenue, more transaction fees for us. So it actually, I think aligns us quite well with our merchants.
Yeah, nice. And attribution, how do you measure attribution? Obviously, retailers are getting more data than ever, and it's coming from different platforms. Do you have your own dashboard, or do you sort of work within the Shopify, GA4 analytics? Like how does the attribution work for your programs?
Yeah, we kind of try to step away as much as possible from the marketing and data tracking side of things, because other people do that a lot better than we could do it. But I mean, in terms of we're charging our transaction fee based on the transactions that have actually gone through the store. So it is what the revenue for subscriptions is, what the revenue for pre-sales is. But very much just focused on, if you've got a one-time product and a pre-sale product in your cart, we're only charging the revenue on the pre-sale product, not on the one-time product that's been purchased. So yes, in that way we kind of avoid awkward attribution conversations. But I think if you're not getting more than 1% ROI from using us, then we weren't the right fit, and we did something wrong in the sales process. So we would definitely like to think that we're delivering a lot more value than we're taking for every merchant who deploys Submarine.
Yeah, 100%. And lastly, how do the brands reach out to you directly, or do they have an agency that typically engages you? What's the general sort of user experience for onboarding when it comes to getting in touch?
Yeah, it works both ways. We have merchants coming to us direct, and we have agencies that we work with on a regular basis. So, I'm very accessible. I'm just Gavin at getsubmarine.com. So if there's anyone listening that's interested, then we're very, very much still at the stage where it's an email the founder, and I'll have a chat with you, and we'll find out if it's a good fit. So we're pretty accessible in that front. We also, one of the reasons we do like working with the larger merchants just means we're able to offer a way higher level of support. We're not trying to get 10,000 merchants on Shopify catering to every possible size of business. We're really wanting to have a smaller selection of merchants that we work with on a long-term basis. And that just means things like being able to have a shared Slack channel and being able to answer questions as they pop up, and offering that level of support, which is one of the biggest differentiators you can have as a vendor in the platform, in the ecosystem rather, is what support you can offer.
Yeah. Brilliant. Perfect, mate. And lastly, you're based in Melbourne, aren't you? What part of Melbourne? Is it Cremorne?
The office is in Cremorne. So if you want to, we're very much in and out of the office, but hey, if you want to grab a coffee, then you can hit me up. And then we've got our teams East Coast Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, pretty local for the Aussies.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us. Some really fantastic insights around, I guess, the future of e-commerce with membership, subscription, pre-sales. Yeah, it's been really insightful and really interesting and fascinating with some of those statistics that you mentioned. So appreciate your time and yeah, all the best with Submarine going forward.
Ah, not at all. Thanks a lot, Ryan. Great chat.
Cheers.